All right, guys. So my name is Yujian Tang. I run OSS for AI. Yes. Okay. Most important slide of the day. This has a QR code that links you to my LinkedIn. So this is the most important slide. Make sure you get this. I run OSS for AI. OSS for AI is a community that exists to give all developers access to the resources to understand, use, and contribute to the development and direction of AI. One of my theses is that within about 4 or 5 years, all developers are going to be AI developers. And I assume that many of you guys believe that too, since you're here at an observability conference run by Arize. Yeah, that's enough about me. I'm here to talk to you about 1,001 ways to build LLM applications. So there's not actually going to be 1,001 ways to build LLM applications. So if you're expecting a list of 1,001 ways to do that, I'm very sorry you will not be getting that today. I just borrowed some inspiration from 1,001 Arabian Nights. Okay, so I wrote this tutorial, I wrote this like market map back in February. It was way smaller back then. Now it's finally clear it's the June update of the LLM stack. So I have this theory that there are some pieces to the LLM stack, and I think it's in the next slide, but I see thumbs up, so I'm gonna keep this slide up. This is the QR code of the Medium article that I wrote back in February, which linked like 50 companies on there, and now there's about 100. And I'm pretty sure that this is like maybe like 1/4 or 1/3 of the actual like total number of companies that are building in the generative AI space right now. These companies are all, not all of these are companies, some of these are tools. But these tools, these companies are all ones that I've like personally went and actually like seen or given a little try out. So what goes into I saw a phone back up, so let me go backwards. I can't go backwards. Okay. Yeah, wait for the last one to go down. Who's built an LLM app before? Okay. Good amount of people to find. There's one person in the back there. All right. And who's put one into production? A couple of you. Okay. And who's like, I still don't know what the best tools are to use. Yeah? Okay, cool. Only one of you. So everybody else knows what the best tools are. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so we'll talk about this. What goes into an LLM application? Clearly, the first thing I have here is the LLM. That's the core driver, the most important piece of the entire stack. This is what enables LLM applications. And then there's the embedding models. So last year when I was doing talks, I had a lot of people asking questions about LLMs and embedding models. People were like, are these the same thing? Are they different? And the answer is, well, they can do the same thing, but they can also do different things. And it just depends on your use case. And then there's different data tools, right? For data, I think worked in AI for long enough. And I think,
Go back to, is that it? That's not your presentation?
yeah.
Okay, there you go. Sorry.
Cool, thank you. So I don't know what I did on this thing here, but data tools. So if you've worked in AI for long enough, you've definitely heard, and you probably actually heard the term today, like the whole like garbage in, garbage out thing, right? So data quality, incredibly important. This is also going to be a critical piece of your stack. So these three things, the LLM, the embedding model, the data tool, these are like non-negotiables. You have to have these if you're building these applications. Then come the optional pieces that depends on what you're going to build. So vector databases are optional. I don't know if this is a controversial thing or not. I used to work in a vector database company, so I feel totally confident saying this. Vector databases are an optional piece. If you're building retrieval augmented generation, which is probably the most popular version of an LLM app, then you're going to need a vector database. If you're building something else, then you may not. And then there's orchestration frameworks. So earlier we heard a great talk from Jerry Liu from Love Index. That is an example of an orchestration framework. LangChain is an example of an orchestration framework. AutoGen is an example of an orchestration framework. He's still in the room. Anyway, if you want to build these from scratch, you can build these from scratch. But what these frameworks do, they make it much, much easier for you to build these applications without having to build in the scratch orchestration or infrastructure yourself. And then when you start putting things into production, that's when you start running into needing things like quality tuning tools. such as Arize, right? If you're going to put something in production, you're going to want to know, like, where did, or what did my LLM output? What was the input to make that output? And how do I trace these calls? And did it hallucinate? And all these sorts of things. And then you're going to need some infrastructure tools to basically put your LLM up online, right? Like if you're building locally, you're building a proof of concept, then it doesn't matter. But once you get to the point where you want to put it in production, you're definitely going to need infrastructure tools. So I'm just going to go, this is an interactive presentation. So I want you guys to raise your hands if you recognize some of these. I'm not going to talk about all these tools, but I want you to raise your hand if you want to recognize some of these tools. So the brown square under LLMs, who recognizes this logo? Most of you recognize it as Anthropic. Anthropic, pretty popular. The M, who recognizes the M logo? Most people know Mistral, right? Yes, okay. What about the one next to the M? Who recognizes that one? A few, okay. Symbol, so Symbol AI does conversational AI. So this was a company that started initially from doing speech to text, right? And then now it's kind of more text than anything, makes sense, and it comes from a speech to text background. A lot of AI LLM use cases are in this kind of conversational realm. So these are just some examples of large language models that you can use. I saw the Meta 2 logo up here, not the Meta 2, the Llama 2 logo up here, but now we're on Llama 3, which has become really popular as well. And I think actually, I don't know if you guys read the black one right here, it's Sicilian. Oh, you? Okay, so actually, one of their people just gave a talk at like 2 in the AI Innovators place. So this is another local LLM. It's like Solar by Upstage. So Casey just gave a talk at 2. So these are just some LLMs you can use. I think the main thing to take away from this is that A, there's a lot of players in this space. B, if you want to build your own foundational model, you're going to have a lot of competition. It's going to be really expensive. And you have a lot of different options. Okay, so there's also LLM providers, right? So these guys might make their own custom LLMs and things like that. And they have, like their own custom models and all these different things. But then when you go to open source, there's a bunch of open source large language models built by companies that I did not put on this slide because there's way too many of them. These guys provide access to open source LLMs and sometimes also their own fine-tuned or proprietary versions. But a lot of these are open source, so we'll see if anybody recognizes these. The blue circle, they recognize the blue circle. Yes, you guys recognize this. You're from Seattle, so this is Octo AI. They're based in Seattle. They both offer a lot of open source LLMs. Let's see, I think the Llama one next to them is very popular. Does anyone recognize the Llama? Llama, yes. Llama is also very popular down here in SF. I think they host a bunch of events. Okay, what about the logo above Llama? Does anyone recognize that one? I think that was really tough, guys. Yes? Okay. Okay, everyone recognizes that one. So once again, the point of the slide is to show you that there's a bunch of different ways to access LLMs. So if we put these two together, we've already covered, this is 12, plus 8. So it's 20 different ways to access the LLM. Now, what we're going to do here, we're not going to add these actually. So this is 20, we're only adding these 2 together. The rest of it is multiple today. So we're going to go way past 1,001 today. All right, so now we're at embedding models. Obviously, these are not the only embedding models available. These are just different ways you can access these embedding models. Voyage AI is a company they started from Stanford. I don't know if they can talk about it. No, okay. But they started from Stanford, they're in the Bay Area, you'll see them around, they give some talks. The one next to Voyage AI, who recognizes that logo? Yes. Hugging Face, thank you. Yes. Hugging Face is very, very popular. My favorite embedding model, my favorite source of embedding models, I don't really care about the other. Hugging Face has pretty much everything you need, free, open source, mobile, product. So now we're at 120 embedding model. Okay, so now if we have more than 10 on the next slide, then we're gonna be way past 1001. I'm gonna stop multiplying because I can only multiply so large in my head. And now there's more than I can count on here, but I guarantee there's more than 10. So these are your infrastructure tools. These tools are the tools that you would need to use if you're going to start basically putting things into production, right? So does anybody recognize any of these logos on here other than Snowflake and Databricks and NVIDIA? Anybody? Okay. Not all of these tools do the same thing. So there's also like an argument to be made here that we can split these into different categories, do some of these tools together. So we can do some combinatorics. But there are 18 different tools on here. So if we pick one, we're at, I don't know, 100. It's a big number. If you pick two, you're at like an even bigger number. So I'll just talk about what some of these tools do and why you use these tools, and then we'll kind of go on. The main point, the main takeaway from this is just that when you start putting things into production, you suddenly have so many more things you need to do, and so many more things you need to use, and so many more tools that you can pick from. And then it's really difficult to know which ones to pick from unless you know exactly how they work. So I'm going to cover some categories of tools in here. I'm not going to cover the exact tools, but just some of the categories in here. So there are some tools in here that do things like store data. So when you put things to production, you're going to need a data store, right? So the database. There's some tools on here that do infrastructure, and not infrastructure, compute at scale. So for example, NVIDIA, everybody knows NVIDIA. That's probably the biggest winner in the Gen AI space so far. There's some companies on here that do things like experimentation or things like routing. So I don't know if anybody's talked about this yet today, but when you put things to production and you change your LLM, which you may have to change your models from time to time. So who here has put ML models to production in general, not LLMs, just ML models? That's a few of you, okay. So, you know, when you change models out, there are ways to change models out, so you need ways to route, ways to create some degradation, ways to do things like that. So an example would be like Porky, which is the hexagon with the chevron in it. Okay, so I've been told there's 5 minutes left. Let's keep it up. Okay, we're going to talk about some of these data tools. Usually I ask people about which things they know, but I don't think I have time to do that today, so we'll just talk about some of these. There's a few categories here as well. So in data, you have things like data quality, which I guess you can also group Arize into. Then you have things like data versioning, like the X and the DEC, like those guys do data versioning. You have like data streaming, if you want to stream data, if you want data in real time, if you want batch data. These are all separate use cases that all require different infrastructure, all of things running different ways. So you have things like Kafka and Bytewax, which is the yellow logo with the hexagons in it. Arize, Pulsar, unstructured. A lot of these different tools will do this kind of moving data around. What other? So there's also like data curation, I guess. Like, you know, like we talked about earlier, garbage in, garbage out. You have well-curated data tools, things like that. Okay, let's see. Vector databases. So I alluded to this earlier. I used to work at a vector database company. Does anybody recognize the black square logo? What company is that? Do you recognize that company? Does? Okay, wow. I did not do a good job in my last role. More of you should have raised your hand for that. So there's a ton of different vector databases. I don't even have all the vector databases on here. Last year, from like July to August, there was like a new one of these every week. And really what vector databases do is they allow you to do this thing called semantic search, right? So we talked about embedding models earlier. And what embeddings do is embeddings give you semantic meaning. And that's how large language models are able to get context. But when you want to work with these, the way you work with them is probably through this thing called semantic search. And so that's why you would use a vector database, such as any of these 12. Or there's like a ton more that I have listed in the article. If you scan the article earlier, you can see much more. Orchestration frameworks. These are Llama Index. I think we gave a talk today. Oh, I don't have AutoGen on here. Well, I shouldn't put AutoGen on here, but I do have the other Microsoft one, which is semantic kernel. And then DSPy also gave a talk today, I believe. Yes, DSPy is on here as well. LangChain's on here. I think everyone has LangChain. These all do different things, different focuses. I'll give you some examples, right? LangChain does this thing where they do a really good job of putting together the inputs and outputs of LLMs. Llama Index does a really good job at doing retrieval and giving you the native data types to do retrieval. Boundaries, the one next to Llama Index, they do a really good job of forcing data type outputs. So each of these does something slightly different, but in the end, they're all orchestration frameworks. Okay, then there's quality tuning. So this one's really important, right? So we're at the Arize conference, Arize is on here. There's a bunch of other tools on here. The one next to Arize just got acquired by Snowflake, so maybe I should just put the Snowflake logo on here. I think Guardrails AI also, they came this one as well. Quality tuning is basically how do you ensure that your LLM isn't spitting out garbage? How do you ensure that your LLM isn't selling a Chevy truck for $1? And things like that. So once again, this is another production level kind of thing. Okay, cool. So I hope I didn't go too far over. I tried to speed through the last parts. So if you have any questions about some of the last ones, you can come find me after. If you want, I am writing a book called Cracking Generative AI Interview. So if you want to release an interest form, scan the QR code, fill it out. I'll send you an email. You can sign up. You can get a pre-release of the book.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yujian. I think you're out of time, actually. Do you have any questions? Actually, I like to be super interactive, but what do you go around with the applause first? What are you coming down from Seattle? Any questions from the audience? Which publisher?
Oh, I'm just publishing this myself. This is my third self-published book, actually.
Okay, we got one question back here. All right.
So this is a very basic question.
This is a very basic problem.
So you want to get started with what would be like a typical scenario where you make one all the things you show on the screen? What would you?
What would I pick? That's a very loaded question. But I'll just kind of go back and I'll tell you about some of my favorites. So LLM providers, I'm going to use Octo AI. I like that they have the ability to access a lot of open source tools on there. They can switch it out. They keep it pretty fresh. And they're also based in Seattle like me. So, embedding models, like I said, I'm showing for Hugging Face 100%. I love Hugging Face. All right. Infrastructure tools. I use Portkey to do routing and do some tracing every so often. That's this one right here. And then I use NVIDIA GPUs. So, of course. Data tools. For data streaming, I probably use either Kafka or Livewax. For data security, I would use Skyflow. For data versioning, you could use Visual Layer, that's the V, or Voxel 51, that's the triangle thing over there. Unstructured is good for something as well. Vector databases, I would use none of these, actually. So here's my hot take. I would use FAISS, F-A-I-S-S, FAISS. Basic AI popularity search, very good. I think, don't quote me, all of these vector databases are built on top of FAISS. I think that's true. At least most of them are built on FAISS. Orchestration frameworks. I use a lot of LangChain and Llama Index, kind of interchangeably. Just they work very similarly.
What about that as a custom? That was a custom.
I feel like for something like in production, I would have to use a custom framework. But I would start with like Llama Index or LangChain just to kind of get things going. Quality tuning. Well, I'm here at a Arize talk, so I'm going to say I'm going to use Arize. But I mean, like in reality, like out of these, Arize has been my favorite to use.